Good evening, Robert Phoenix here, broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg. What's happening, everybody? Getting in a little late tonight. I apologize, but of course, I'm here to bring you the best that I can in terms of what's happening astrologically as I try to bite my nails all the way through the fantasy football hell that I'm in right now. Oh my God. Why do I do this stuff? Why do I play fantasy football? I'm pretty successful at it, generally speaking. I'm in a playoff game, and I have to share this with you. It's all about weirdness and time and chance. I mean, there's just so much. I mean, when I play fantasy football, I actually learn about like weird timelines and probabilities and all kinds of crazy shit that you don't normally. It's almost like it's weird. Okay, it's totally weird watching how events play out, or certain players and plays play out in certain events or certain games. Let me just give you an example. All right, and we'll bring it into astrology. I promise. Okay, I'm just waiting for people to show up here. This is the preamble. So we're in a championship game. Championship game means that me and my buddy, if we win $1,200, which is pretty good. Like that's, $1,200. It's not huge money, but it's kind of worthwhile for the time that I spent doing this. Okay. So we really want to win $1,200. We want to win $1,200. It'd be great. So I'm watching, and I'm in other leagues, and I have this other league that's playing. And last week, the team that I have in this other league did so well that I had a bye. Isn't that great? I mean, I didn't have to have a playoff game. And then what happened is my team scored 200 points, even though it wasn't playing. In the meantime, I lost just about everybody from my team. And this week, I just basically blew a gasket, and I'm going to lose that game. So it's a bizarre thing. It's such a bizarre kind of reality where 1 week you have these theoretical people that are doing things for you and they're doing great, but they have no impact on you whatsoever because you're actually not playing that week. And then the next week when you actually need to play them, it's like completely opposite and completely different. So this week, it's a whole other story with this one team that I have to share the story. And I know it's like fantasy, it's like Dungeons and Dragons for jocks, but I have to share this because it's a time thing. So I'm watching. I have Red Zone for the NFL Network. I get to see every scoring play. Every time the ball gets into like the 40-yard line or whatever, I get to see that too. So I'm watching this game between the Seahawks and the Arizona Cardinals. And we actually have the Seahawks kicker. And he's getting ready to kick a field goal. And this is a guy, his name is what? Jason Myers. Oh, Jasper's here. Jason Myers. Not Michael Myers, but Jason Myers. So he is a pretty good field goal kicker. And he gets out there and they take a delay of game. And the delay of game means that it takes them too long to actually hike the football, put the ball down, and the kicker can drive his foot through the ball and hopefully put it through the uprights, okay? You never see a delay of game when it comes to kicking a field goal. Never. They get a delay of game penalty, and it pushes them out of field goal range. Boom, out of field goal range. So what do? Well, they punt the ball. And I'm thinking to myself, I really hope that play does not actually cost us the game. Because if it's a 3-point spread and he didn't kick the damn ball because there was a delay of game. So I'm thinking about the ramifications of this event rippling through time with my fantasy football league. All right. So there's this weird kind of like matrixy thing going on here. So fast forward, we're ahead, but all of a sudden, some of his players start to light it up a bit. And I'm starting to get pretty antsy with the results of kind of, or the potential results. So it's the Cowboys and the Eagles. And hats off to Carson Wentz. Dropping a little astrology here. Carson Wentz is a Capricorn. And you want to talk about a symbol of endurance? Holy smokes. This guy has lost pretty much everybody who's got any talent on his offensive side of the ball. He's lost three of his receivers. His tight ends are falling down. They're dropping like flies. It's really, they're playing with just bare bones. One of their receivers is a guy that was playing in some, NFL wannabe league. He's a converted quarterback. He hadn't really played pro football. Now all of a sudden, he's like the number one receiver. And all I've seen this guy Carson Wentz, the Capricorn, do is endure. That's all he's done all season. Early in the season, a couple of the guys who play wide receiver started to openly diss him with the media. One of them had a Nelson Aguilar had a Twitter burner account, where he was actually criticizing and dissing Carson Wentz, but it wasn't. This guy plays for him. Same team. And he's ripping him. And there are all these rumors that there's dissension. And I saw it too, by the way. I was watching a clip earlier in the season where the offensive line was not blocking for Carson Wentz. They had given up. It was weird. It was like this guy has such a high level of dislike on that team. And a lot of it stems from the fact that there was another guy, Nick Foles, who took them to the Super Bowl. Everybody loved Nick Foles. Nick Foles is a nice guy, super humble, super sweet. He's an Aquarian, 0 degree Aquarian. Both Foles and Carson Wentz happen to be Christians. But I guess they're different kinds of Christians, because they like the Nick Foles version of Christianity better. And in fact, Nick Foles is so beloved in the city of Philadelphia that they have a statue. This is just 2 years ago? They have a statue of the guy in front of the stadium. A statue. So every time Carson Wentz has to go to work, he's got to go see Nick Foles, right? Nick Foles hasn't even retired. He's still playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he's got a statue up in front of the stadium. That's how much they love this guy. And that's how much they don't like Carson Wentz. And what has Carson Wentz done? He's just endured everything. He endured the criticism. He endured being sold out by his teammates. He endured betrayal. He endured the fans of Philadelphia, who are famously fickle, turning on him. He endured losing. He endured comparisons to Nick Foles. And starting about 3 weeks ago, all the guy did was just win with nothing around him. And he did it again today. So if you want to understand kind of the nature of Capricorn, Nick Foles is your guy. Just in terms of the endurance fact. That's not Nick Foles, sorry. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is your guy. Just in terms of the endurance. He just endured it. And he's excelled. And tonight, with nothing, they beat the Dallas Cowboys, who are a dumpster fire at this point. So again, it gets into this weird kind of fantasy football, potential outcome, parallel realities, all kinds of weird shit that goes on. We're playing this guy who has a member of the Philadelphia Eagles, got the name of Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders he's having a great game. He's killing us, by the way. And there's just a few seconds left in the game, and they give the ball to Miles Sanders. And Miles Sanders breaks through the line, and he's headed for the end zone. He's going to score a freaking touchdown. And if he scores a touchdown, then our fantasy season is over. It is kaput. We're done. Done. But he doesn't. He lays down about 25 yards later, because he knew that if he scored, then there was a chance that maybe, just maybe, the Cowboys to get the ball back. I don't think they would have. But it looks good. You know, it looks really good. It looks like, wow, man, this guy took one for the team. Well, the guy that we're playing against fantasy-wise probably at that point in time, if he had a small object next to him, it probably would have been a projectile headed towards the TV. And I know it just like does, you know, makes it may be just totally trivial, but it's just kind of this weird continuum of life, because now we have to watch out for this guy's field goal kicker, Harrison Butker, who is like this freaking howitzer. And he's already hit a 50-yard plus field goal, okay? That's like big points for stuff like that. Big time points. So, you know, it's just, I'll tell you what fantasy football has done for me, besides turn me into a social outcast, is that it has taught me the beauty of non-attachment. It has really taught me the beauty of non-attachment, because you cannot be attached to the results, right? You have all these different probabilities, but you can't be attached to them. It's a form of gambling, right? So that's what gamblers have to go through. They have to be, you know, not attached to whatever the outcome is, and then try to figure out, you know, within reason, how to affect future outcomes by understanding variables, angles, numbers, et cetera, et cetera. So it's taught me a fair amount. Pardon me while I check my fantasy football score. Hopefully it's okay. Let's see what we got here. All right. We're hanging on by a very, very slim margin. It's razor thin, let me tell you. It is so thin. My God, it's in the second quarter, and it's 10-0 Kansas City. All right. Thank you for allowing that, man. It's therapy. I had to get this off my chest. And let me tell you, being a Cowboy fan here in Texas, I'm not a Cowboy fan, but I go out and I watch the Cowboys sometimes because I want to be around the people and just see how they respond. Let me tell you, there are some people today, they should have been taking away their car keys because there was a chance that they could use their vehicles as a weapon. That's how angry these people were. Crazy, huh? All right, let me check in with you. Let's see where you guys are. Let's see what we got here. All right, we've got Michael. Hey, Michael, Misty, and Judy, Heather, and Colleen, and Chris and Steve. I've never seen so many phantom tackles. Yeah, it's what happens when you get down to the end of the season. There's Nancy. Hi, Nancy. There's Tamara. And you got Gandalf with you, Maury. That's good. There's Sticky Marks. Hey, Sticky. There's Robin. Joni. Hey, Joan. And Leanne. Okay. We got a few people in the house. Not too shabby. The plight. The plight of a gambler. I even lost a 3-team parlay today. I had won my first 2 games. Had them nailed, but Mr. Carson Wentz and the Philadelphia Eagles put an end to that. All right, let's get into some astrology. I'm going to shift some gears here. And I want to talk about sort of what a special time this is for the world and you and me. When I say special time, I'm not talking about, 8:27 here, Central Standard Time. I'm talking about like here in this planet, on this planet, this matrix, this simulacra, right? This thing that we're in, which is like seething and pulsing and pumping, and it is roiling with energy right now. Roiling with energy. And some of it's kind of intense, and some of it is angry, and some of it is dark, and some of it is dare I say, hopeful. There's a lot of energy right now. Like there is a ton of energy on this planet. Now, it may not all be percolating upwards towards, some kind of, joyous concrescence, right? I mean, that's really not what's in the air. But there is a lot of energy happening right now. And we're going to get a big dose of it here over the course of the next 3 to 4 weeks, starting next week with the on the 26th, of course, with the eclipse, which I've gone over a number of times. I'm not sure if I'll put that out tonight. I do want to look at the solstice. I'm going to bring the solstice chart up. I'm going to bring up the chart at the moment. I got a few other charts that we can look at tonight. So why don't I bring up one of the charts, and then that'll launch us into kind of a discussion about what I think is happening and where I think this is really like a juicy turning point for us, for our story, for each and every one of us. And I just had a video with Regina come out, and it might have been a little bit dark. And that's one part of the story too. We can't deny that, right? I mean, there are things happening that are, that are reaching sort of a climatic crisis level. I'm sure you're all following what's going on with the impeachment process, and you're following what's going on with Trump, and you're following what's going on with Rudy Giuliani. I mean, Giuliani apparently has all the goods. I mean, like, he went there. He's got what they call a shit ton of evidence. A shit ton of evidence. He's been there for apparently about 7 months now. And he's just been acquiring all the stuff. Now, I'm not a big Rudy Giuliani fan. I mean, the guy basically turned his nose and looked the other way when 9/11 happened. Same with Donald Trump, by the way. They know what happened. They know who did it. So I'm not going to sit here the drum for Rudy Giuliani as being a great American. I would not embrace that mantra. I would not chant that mantra. But he's a Gemini, so he's useful, right? Trump's a Gemini, and he's useful. Boris Johnson is a Gemini. I mean, it is the attack of the Geminis on the global stage. The Trump-Boris Johnson thing is interesting. I don't want to get into it tonight, but it's kind of that weird Gemini symmetry thing. It's like, wow, both Geminis, they both have really weird hair. I mean, what are the odds on that? They're both born in New York City, right? Now they're both kind of running countries. And what are the odds of that? And they're both working for Israel. Yeah, that's another little thing they have in common. Anyway, so Giuliani's got the shit, apparently. Now, Judicial Watch has also fired something out there and a Freedom of Information. And again, I'm not a huge Judicial Watch person. I mean, it's okay. If you follow who funds Judicial Watch, you'll follow sort of some of the breadcrumbs, and it's some of the usual suspects with clearly an allegiance and alliance to our most favored nation trading partner in the entire planet, right? So there's a big war going on there. Like, it feels to me that the Democrats have known. I'm going to go into a political thing here, okay? I have to, because we live in a political environment, right? It would be great to transcend it. Yeah, it would be, and we probably will, but it's not happening like tomorrow. Maybe it would happen tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe, big, hypersonic missile hits Washington, D.C., and the rest of the United States gets pulse. All of a sudden, we're not having a government anymore. Not going to happen tomorrow. Not going to win. No, it's not. So, where am I? I got Emily just sent me a text. So this is happening, and I think that the Democrats have known for months now They've known for months. Why have they known for months? Because they have had their spy agencies in place. They've had the FBI in place. They've had the CIA in place. They've had the NSA in place. So they've known that Trump all of a sudden just didn't get a hair up his butt about Ukraine. No, they've been working on this. This is part of a back channel thing that Trump has been working on for months now. And that Rudy Giuliani has been working on getting stuff from Ukraine for months. And that's why Ukraine has become a focal point and a center point for this whole discussion and debate, because what they want to do, the Democrats, i.e. Joe Biden, and not just Democrats, by the way, like Mitt Romney's in on this as well. They want to flood the space with as much information about Trump so that when Trump and Giuliani flood the space with their information, it's going to be this sort of, really murky wash so that people are not theoretically going to know what's real or not real, right? So this has been the plan. Once you get into Ukraine, apparently it is the mother lode. Let me do this. It is the mother lode. Oh, come on. It's a huge thing. And the energy around that is massive. That's just one thing. That's just one thing. And of course, we have to kind of untangle this and untie this because it affects us on some level. On other levels, it doesn't affect us at all. But on a certain level, it does affect us. It was interesting reading the comments on Regina's show or the YouTube page. Well, pretty positive, I have to say. Pretty positive. Except for a couple, and I, I've been doing this for a long time, and a lot of people, there are people that don't agree with what I have to say. And a lot of the times, my feeling is that what they disagree with isn't really what I'm actually talking about, but what I am theoretically representing. And I'll give you one example. Well, it's two examples, actually. So in fact, one of these comments, well, I guess the comment is still there. But so there's this one comment on Regina's page where the guy says, this was great until, Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi, and they're doing all this stuff and helping, everything become exposed. And this is really good until, I heard you guys start talking more, and it's pretty clear that you're Democrats and socialists. If anybody who's ever spent more than half an hour with me, you'll know that I'm neither. Now, I can't speak for Regina. I don't profess to know what Regina's political beliefs are, but I know what mine are, and they're not Democrat. They're not Republican either, and they're not socialist. So I was being perceived as a Democrat and a socialist. You scroll down, and there's somebody who says, he ruins it for me because he supports Trump and hate. And where have I said that? I am a supporter of truth to the best of my ability. And sometimes you'll see some truthful shit coming through this whole Trump movie. And sometimes you won't see the truth. But if you dig deep enough, you will, and you may not like it. Especially if you're like a heavy duty pro-Trumper, because there's stuff there that you may not like. But I wouldn't call myself that. However, I think it's easy for people on some level to just hit you with a label. Say, this is who this guy is, and I hate him for that. But it's weird. I get it. I've been doing this for a while, and it happens frequently. Happens when I do my chats with Heather too. and that there's just a lot of assumptions going on. And maybe I'll just make a video one day about what I believe, and I just link it to everything. And that way people can understand it on some level. So there's a lot of energy happening. Let's get into it. Let's get into some of these charts. And but it's, again, this is kind of the world we're living in, because people, there's some people who just want easy answers. They just want easy labels. They just want to like nail like something because it makes their life easier. It's the easy button approach to typology versus actually, you know, digging in and digging through and drilling down and saying, oh shit, you know, there's something here. You know, maybe I've you know, misjudged this person, or maybe I wasn't really listening, you know. And I think we've lost the art of listening because we're all so defensive. And even I get defensive sometimes, which, you know, I've had to work on. Mars and Cancer. Okay, let me throw this chart up here. All right. So here's what we got. This is the winter solstice. This is from 10:39 last night. And I just wanted to look at some of the energies because I really feel like these are the energies that are setting us off for the coming year. Of course, we have the eclipse energies coming up, but this is the darkest night of the year, right? This is when we get in touch with things. And I got in touch with a few things last night, which I want to share with you tonight in a good way. So Virgo was on the ascendant. And if we're in the chart of the moment, right, at 10:39, what is Virgo doing on the ascendant? It's leading us in our awareness. So I know what I was doing last night on 10:39. I was on my couch and I was thinking about my life, thinking about where I've been, thinking about the past year, the year before, thinking about the time ahead and the changes that I want to make in my life. I was having a critical view of my personal experience. That's Virgo on the ascendant. That's where I was. And it was not a bad thing. Not a bad thing. I'll share some of that with you as I go through this. The sun at 0 degrees Capricorn. It's a powerful time. A really powerful time. It is a window. It is a gateway of the void. This is the void. This is last night was that, you know, oh, silent night. That was last night. The 0 degree sun, the void, the empty void, the empty space, ancient, timeless. But Capricorn also connects into the future. That's the interesting piece about Capricorn that I've always found fascinating. That it's like the slide rule of our experience. The moon is looking backwards. And lunar awareness is in many ways backwards awareness, meaning we're looking back into time. It's nostalgic. Capricorn can go there too, but it looks on the past with a more dispassionate glance. It moves into the future as well because it's looking, theoretically, Saturn's looking out towards the outer planets. So it's looking out towards Pluto and trans-Pluto and beyond, right? And theoretically, that's the future. Behind it is the theoretical past. So Saturn is very much dialed into time. So last night we had Mercury at 19 Sagittarius, which is philosophical, right? We know Mercury is philosophical. And it was in a quintile with Mars. So here's our friend Mars, right there. And the quintile happens to be, well, that's Venus quintile, my bad. It's a Venus quintile with Mars. What is Mercury doing? There was something going on with Mercury, squaring Neptune last night, and it was the biquintile to Vesta in the semi-square to Venus, right? Interesting. And Sagittarius, very philosophical, expansive. Next to Pallas, which has to do with structure and form. And Pallas itself has kind of an interesting resonance with timelessness as well. In terms of the asteroids, you've got Juno, the marrying maiden. You have Ceres, the nurturing mother. You have Pallas, who is sort of the mature, wise, powerful consort. These are feminine figures, okay? They're feminine figures. So this would be like Hera. And then we have Vesta, which is the eternal flame. So with Mercury and the biquintile to Vesta, we could play with that. And Vesta actually happens to be sort of the highest point in this chart. So it is the flame, it is the light of the chart in the ninth house, which tends to be philosophical. And it's in the sign of Taurus, which represents money, resources. This is what I was thinking about last night. Money and resources. Money, resources, and power. And I'll get to that. That was part of my mercurial meditation. We have Jupiter right here, conjunct the sun, also, kind of rooted in this potential for expansion. And the idea of expansion around money and power and resources. So I wasn't even looking at this chart last night. I was just feeling these things. And now I'm looking at the chart, I'm understanding them even more kind of innately. Let me tell you what my experience was. So on Friday, I did the show on the commercial stuff. And there were a couple of people in the chat room. And there's this one guy I was talking to another, I'm assuming they're guys. And they were talking to one another. And one of them was kind of deriding what I was doing. Like, why are we breaking down this pop culture shit? Why don't we do videos that celebrate our own culture? And then they were dialoguing a bit. Well, why don't we start a micronation? And I'm assuming, again, I don't want to, make an assumption, but the micronation was probably a nation of people that had similar beliefs, similar ideas, similar tenes and connections to truth, right? Okay. That's what I'm assuming. That's what I'm assuming. And maybe there is more. Maybe I'm assuming that he wanted to start a white nation. Let's just start a white nation because it seems like we're being blotted out of commercials and history. Well, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all, because they have other nations that are sovereign unto themselves, right? Like, is China a quote unquote white nation, or is Japan a quote unquote? And these are countries that have really, really rigorous standards around who can become a citizen. And in Japan, they're basically eliminating the Muslims from Western Japan, Mongolia. They're in like internment camps. So, and I'm not here to promote a quote unquote white nation. Okay. That's not what I'm saying. But if somebody wanted to do that, I don't have a problem with that. I don't, because there are plenty of models in the world that suggest that there are other sovereign models that are exclusively hegemonic. But I'm assuming that what they were talking about was a micronation based on certain tenes, certain beliefs, and certain ideas and ideals. That's what I'm assuming. Now, what they were assuming, I don't know. But that's what I'm assuming. I think there might have been the implication that they were thinking about something else. And then I thought about that, because there are a lot of people right now that are rejecting popular culture. They're rejecting modern culture. This is why the Tartarian thing is singing to so many people's hearts. And they, mine included. I look at it and go, oh my God, look at that. Talk about nostalgia. Holy shit. Tartaria, those were the good old days. We're yearning for something like that. We're yearning for something that's out of time. out of our condition, our current conditions, our context, where we are now. We're yearning for something like that. People are dissatisfied with the current cultural milieu. And it's not just any one group. I'm telling you, there are plenty of people subdivided amongst the rainbow tribes of this country and perhaps the world, which can say, I'm dissatisfied with where I live and I'm dissatisfied with my culture. And there's a reason for that, because that's been socially engineered. Okay. But let's just say for a minute that you wanted to do something different. Let's say you said, hey, micronation. Well, why don't we start off like a community? Why don't we start a community? Why don't we have a group of people that all resonate and vibe with one another, and we're all more or less in agreement around, how we view the universe and how we treat each other and what we're going to do with resources and the land. And, and there's this kind of generalized organizing principle that allows people to actually come together and do something. And guess what? You know what you don't have? You don't have resources. And I thought about this, and I thought about this process that we're in, which for I would say the last 10 years has been about awakening. People are waking up. People are getting red-pilled. People are getting woke. This is what's been happening. The time for awakening is over. And it really happened about last year when we went through that whole psychodrama with Alex Jones and Joe Rogan and the true node in Leo and the south node in Aquarius. Like it's over. They're shutting shit down. They're being very hardcore about shutting things down. Just recently, the videos of the late great Yuri Bezmenov, the guy who popularized this idea of communist subterfuge, degradation, and demoralization. Those videos on YouTube are gone now. They're gone. You can't find them. So we're in a very interesting time. And the time for awakening is done. Like I could go through every single one of you in the chat room. If I had a one-on-one with you, I could ask you certain things about certain periods, certain so-called conspiracies, alternative histories, and you guys would all get A's. You'd all get A's. I know you would. Like, how much more do we need to know? So I began to think about this last night, and what really came to hit me was that we do not have resources. We don't. We don't have, we have truth, right? But there are a lot of really impoverished people in India who have a lot of truth and walk around with rice bowls in their hands. But we don't have resources. And if you do have resources, God bless you. Don't stop. So it got me to thinking about where we are now on the cusp of the 2020s. This is a new time. This is a new era. It's a new decade. And it's marked by the number 22, which is a master number. It's an important number. It's the number of the master builder. Look where Pluto is. It's at 22 Capricorn, right there. Boom. Saturn at 20, right? Right there. 20, well, not quite 2022, but we'll be there before you know it. So what was this saying to me? What was this speaking to me? Last night with this Jupiter-Sun conjunction in Capricorn, well, what it was saying to me was that it is time for us to become masters, right? Not masters in a grand kind of great white brotherhood sense, but to master our environment, to have some form. This is it, man. This is our time, okay? We can all do so much more. We can't do so much more. The sponge is full. It's full. This is a new time, a new decade, a new era. And it's about mastery. It's about mastering your environment. It's about mastering your money. It's about mastering your resources. It's about mastering how you interact with other people. It's about mastering your emotions. Yeah, I just said that. Mastering your emotions. They're good emotions. You feel sad, in a really integral kind of way. Like, feeling sad is an important thing. If you feel humiliated, the humiliation can actually spur you maybe to do something. Mastering one's emotions doesn't mean we deny our emotions. It's that we master the emotions that keep us or get in the way of our being able to be successful and intentional and leading us towards greater mastery. This was the light bulb went off in my head last night. It was a real revelation for me. And I looked at my life and I looked at what I'm doing and I looked at what I've done. And I have to say, I love what I do and I love you guys. I am not satisfied. I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing and what I've done and where theoretically I want to go. And I'm just making an open admonition. Because if we really want to play big, then we're going to have to really reorient our consciousness to play big. And if we want to have a shot at being in this world at a horizontal playing field, horizontal level with the other people who, quite frankly, have said, we're fucking playing big or we're going to play big and we're not going to give a shit about how we play big. And this is why you get into stuff like the Ukraine and all that crap. You get into crime family syndicates, because they're playing big and they're playing big with their own rules. They've already been there. But what they haven't done is they haven't done the work. They haven't done the work around awakening and consciousness. And maybe they have their own version and maybe think that if they're able to summon up, some kind of interdimensional deity through some, sort of, bloody ritual, that they're locked into their version of power and their version of awakening, albeit a darker way. But I guarantee you it's not. It's not. So they haven't done the work. People who have gone through their daily lives and had to endure, had to go through things, had to stumble, had to fail, they're doing the work. I had a reading yesterday with this woman. And, a lot of times in our culture, unfortunately, we place emphasis on people who are powerful. We've done this for a long time. It's gotten us in real trouble because it's taken us outside of ourselves in many, many instances. And what we haven't done is we haven't understood, the power of a noble life, either well lived or the adversity that's overcome by the living of that life. And I had a reading with a woman yesterday, and the stuff she went through, are you kidding me? It would flatten some people. Absolutely flatten some people. Still in the game. Still in the game, still learning, still growing. And, I had to, you look at her chart and I had to say, look, I understand why you've gone through what you've gone through. I can kind of see it in your chart. And you cannot not take notice of where you've been and what you've gone through, because you're in the game and you're growing and you're living and you're doing great. And it's not somebody who is like, on some fucking talk circuit somewhere. They're not doing webinars. I mean, they're living their lives. And they were homeless for a brief period of time. Lost, didn't physically lose their family, but emotionally lost their family, which is even worse in a lot of ways. And so when people have lives like that, they have those experiences, they're very powerful. And they cannot be underestimated. You just can't. So no matter where you are on the spectra of kind of worldly success, just whether you're there or not there, wherever you are, just realize that, you've gone through probably a lot to get to where you are right now. And it's time for us to get to the next level. It is time. And so when I look at this chart and I see Mars in Scorpio trining into Neptune in Pisces, Mars in Scorpio is powerful. And trining into Neptune and Pisces, it's possibility. It's moving away, separating, it's possibility. It's creative possibility. And even Venus in Aquarius here, which has some component of the dream, like the social dream or the collective dream for the future. That this is our time. This is our time to live intentional. This is our time to live intentional. So what do I mean by that? Well, what do you want to do? First of all, for me personally, the resource thing, that is going to be number one for me. Like 2020 is going to be my journey into like collecting resources in a way that hopefully I can use them to help other people. You know, that's where I want to go. This is where we are at this time of year and coming up on these eclipses, right? They're powerful. They're galvanizing. So I'm here to, you know, ask you, right? To ask you, what do you want to be intentional with? What level of mastery do you want to commit to for not just this coming year, not just the coming decade, but for the rest of your life? This is where I think we are. And if we don't wrap our heads around that, we're always going to be the sisters of the poor. We're always going to be those quirky, weird, alternative, tinfoil hat wearing, truth fucking people. Okay? This is a call to play in the world, but to play in the world with integrity, to take what we've learned, to take what we've gone through, the experiences that we've had, the epiphanies, the revelations, the understanding about what's going on behind the scenes, and not to have those things paralyze us, but to spur us to move forward. This is where we are, in my estimation. My estimation. So we have a period now. We've got the winter solstice. We have the chart of the moment, which is really not that far off. I may just blow that off tonight. And we have, of course, the solar eclipse coming on the 25th, 26th. The lunar eclipse happening, what is on the 10th, 11th, 10th? And then we have that big Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Man, this is the time. This is the time to galvanize your spirit. What do you want? What level of mastery do you want to have? What level of intentionality do you want to bring to your life? And how can it help and serve others as a result of that? It's all down here. Right there. Right there. Boom. Right? Virgo ascending. All right. Let me check in and talk with you guys. See what you're thinking about what I'm talking about. You're just about 47.8 minutes late. Oh, Bonnie, I'm late too. Such good news. Play by your own rules and move ahead. Unchained would be nice. What else do we have? Yes, now the time is now, not someday. Yep. Go hard or go home. Yep. Love and good deeds. Don't ever forget those. Let's see. What else do we have? That's exciting. I wish you the best in that venture. What else do we have here? Shall I feed the beast last supper? That's up to you, Michael. I feel the same way, not satisfied, restless. That's coming from Robin. Let's see. Well, I just took a major step towards this. Paid cash for a tiny house in the country that needs work, but it's paid for. Don't have to be a slave. Congratulations, Tinfoil Tiara. Congratulations. There you go. Congratulations. Good for you. Let's see. You know, it's funny. YouTube, man, has these weird, like, filters. My brother Zygos said working your ass off. And they decided to, like, Saturn and Capricorn, he was working your ass off and reaping the benefits in Aquarius. You're right. And they actually held that for review. Isn't that nice of YouTube? Michael says, a natural activation of warrior soul within me has awakened ancestral memories. There you go. There you go. I will say this also marked the official beginning of the time to be masters, just as Robert said. Well, if Maury says, you're damn right. You're damn sure right. I'm right. Maury's interesting. Maury's very interesting. Very interesting character. He's got a lot to say. Very insightful fellow, that Maury. All right, let's see. What else we have here? It can slip into Orwell territory, but I think it is unlikely. If it is, man, you know what? We're not those people. We're just not those people that George Orwell depicted. We're not. We're the kids that got detention and suspension. That's who we are. Okay, what else do we have here? I wish I knew some red-pilled peeps. Let's hang out here in the chat room for a while. As homogenized and corporate as modern culture is, a quality of life is much better. Yes, I would agree. Although I would say I was having this idea that they're turning America into a favela today. That's just me. Okay. Anything else? Live intentional and find out. I recently sat at the Via Camba, Ecuador, the Valley of Longevity, and meditated, connected with ancient wisdom. All right, there you go. More needs a place he can speak freely. Yes, I would agree with that. Full spectrum dominance is our plan. If you don't lick my boots, well, you tell me. I'm not sure. I guess the full spectrum dominance is their plan, right? I don't know if it's my plan. I'm not really into full spectrum dominance. I think I can get in trouble with full spectrum dominance. That would be that would be too much of a test. Okay, please indulge me. I'm going to check what's going on with my fantasy team. Where are we? Where are we? Where are we? Living on the edge. That's where we are. We're living on the edge. 10 minutes to go in the third quarter. Just a few more quarters. Hit that big payout. I want to look at a couple of charts tonight. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I love to do is I love to watch documentaries on people. And sometimes I like to watch documentaries on people that are quite eccentric and outside the box. Sometimes I like to watch documentaries on people that are very successful. And I can often learn from those documentaries or from those lives. And I began to get really fascinated with Vidal Sassoon, which is really weird because they went to the same health retreat together one time. And Vidal Sassoon, it's actually a pretty funny story. Vidal Sassoon and Gore Vidal, they kind of knew each other. And apparently somebody got the Vidal thing mixed up. And they were getting colonics. And apparently Gore Vidal was getting Vidal Sassoon's colonic cocktail and vice versa, which I thought, that's really funny. I thought it was funny. It's like, okay. I wonder if that changed them, because those colonic cocktails theoretically are very, very specific, right? Theoretically. Okay, so what I wanted to do is Vidal Sassoon is a really interesting character. And he also happens to be a Capricorn. And I kind of first let's put a visual of Vidal Sassoon up here. Give me a second. I first got kind of interested in him about 2-3 weeks ago as kind of an interesting historical character, because I was watching a very cool movie called My Generation. And it was starring Michael Caine. And it was Michael Caine looking back on London, the 60s, and the people that made London during that time. a very interesting place. MK Ultra and Tavistock and all, right? And Gore Vidal is one of these very pivotal people because he sets this. I'm sorry, Vidal Sassoon. He sets the style in a lot of ways of the 1960s because he was very into these angular haircuts. And, you know, I'm not sure how well the haircuts have aged. They're kind of very futuristic in a lot of ways. And he was very much influenced by architecture. And that architecture was determining his haircut style. And he went through a lot of shit to get to where he was. Let me see. I just want to find a really good picture of him. Hold on. Okay. And this kind of dovetails with what I've been talking about, which has to do with these ideas around intentionality, mastery, endurance, and upping your game in life. So why don't let me click on, I'm just trying to find a really good photo of the dude. Let me grab this one here, because this one has his quote unquote partner in crime, this woman, Mary Quant. And Mary Quant was a fashion designer. And between the two of them, they were really instrumental again in sort of styling the 60s, you know, Tavistock shit and all. Okay, so let me show you this picture. This is, just in case you don't have a visual of Vidal Sassoon. I'll bring it up here. So this is Vidal Sassoon with Mary Quant. And of course, he's got his famous, you know, angular cut. I think he could probably only cut one style of hair. No, that's not true. But he wanted a brand, right? He wanted a total brand. And the thing that was really interesting about Vidal Sassoon is that he was raised in poverty. He was born in 1928, which is the year that I talked about with Tessa. And you go back and you look at 1928, and there are just so many freaking culture changers in 1928. I'll give you three right off the top of my head: Noam Chomsky, Vidal Sassoon, and Philip K. Dick. And that's just three. One changes linguistics and then politics. The other changes fashion and hair, and the other changes science fiction and in some ways temporal reality. Those are just three people, and there's a whole lot more. So here he is with Mary Quant, and Vidal Sassoon. His family was so poor, so his father left them when he was young, and Vidal was Jewish, and he was raised, interestingly enough, in I believe, a Christian or a Episcopal orphanage. So he had some time with the other version of, or one of the other versions of the Abrahamic faiths. And his mother would come and visit him on a monthly basis. He and his brother. Can you imagine that? Giving your kid up for a while because you can't afford him, but you get to visit him once a month. This is what he endured. Okay. And when he got out, he went through the school system, and he was not very good at things. But he learned how to cut hair. And those scissors became his gateway to the world. And there were two things that I found very interesting about him. Well, more than two things. But one was that he had a really bad Cockney accent. And there was this guy by the name of Mr. Raymond, who was this very eccentric hairstyle. So Mr. Raymond was Gore Vidal before Gore Vidal. And Gore Vidal wanted to work for Mr. Raymond. But once Mr. Raymond heard him speak, wouldn't let him. So Gore Vidal had to go work with a diction language and articulation teacher. And he found a woman who worked with actors, people like Michael Caine, who has a very distinct Cockney accent. But Michael Caine can speak in what they call posh, which is kind of the upper class, be kind of the difference between like, speaking Bostonian versus Harvardian or something like that, right? So he went to her and asked her for her help. And she denied him. She said, no, I only work with actors and people of note, statesmen, politicians, things like that. And he said something or did something, and it kind of grabbed her attention. And she said, okay, I'll work with you, but you have to follow what I have to say, right? I think he articulated for her, and he was such a mess, but she could tell that he was really trying. Vidal Sassoon, Vidal Sassoon worked with this one for 3 years. He worked on his diction and his articulation for 3 years because he understood that in order for him to be a success in the world, in the way that he wanted to, he had to present himself and communicate with people in a way that was, in his mind, elevated. That's intentionality. That isn't, he could have packed it in. Once Mr. Raymond squashed him like a little bug, he could have said, oh shit, maybe I should just go, cut heads down at the local barbershop. Oi, piss off, Mr. Raymond, or whatever, right? But he didn't do that. He's like, okay, I'm going to learn. I'm going to speak better. I'm going to articulate, speak well. And that's what he did. The other thing he did I thought was really interesting was that in 1948, he decided that he was going to go to Israel, right? So all this shit's happening in Israel, and he wanted to get there. It was like, for him, it was like the Wild West. Although I guess in this case, it'd be the Wild East. And so he went to Israel, and he was like part of the IDF for about a year. I mean, that was his rite of passage. And what was really interesting is he said something that also echoed something that Anthony Bourdain said that I reheard over the weekend. It was an episode of Bourdain when he's in Egypt. And he goes out into the desert with the Bedouins there. And he's in the desert, he's in the dunes, and he's under these, this just massive starry sky, which is just incredible, right? And he comes to this realization that if you stay like a week in the desert, like you're changed. It just changes you. It cleanses you, purifies you. You get in touch with this vastness, right? And Vidal Sassoon talks about that as well. He talks about being in the desert. Then he also talks about having a sense of belonging. Now, whether or not you agree with what happened in 1948, it's like, look, countries take other countries all the time. They take them all the time. It'd be one thing if, there was this kind of conquest that went down, and then, the people that took over the land treated everybody pretty well, right? That'd be one thing, but that hasn't been the case. Because history has proven that what happened in 1948 has been absolutely and utterly tragic for that part of the world and for the majority of the planet. I'm sorry, I'm just stating facts. I'm not Pollyanna. Countries get taken over all the time. It's part of the world that we live in. But what happens when those countries are taken over is a whole other story. It's a whole completely other story. So we have to look at it in the face of the historical unfolding past 1948. But in 1948, he didn't know. In 1948, he saw this thing as being connected to him, his theoretical or so-called lineage. Somebody who'd grown up in essentially a Christian, dormitory, not even a foster kid. He was in this weird kind of liminal state where he was kind of owned and operated by the state. But his mother there was no belonging there. And I think when he went there, and he says this, I finally found a place where I felt like I belonged. I don't slight him for that at all. Right? I don't. And I think in a lot of ways, I think it's kind of our current predicament in terms of how we judge people, you know? Because there are sometimes there are people that have done or had certain things like just because I have the name Phoenix, I got slammed one time on Henry Mackow's site, you know, Phoenix program and all this other shit, you know, but it has nothing to do with me, you know. So, you know, Vidal Sassoon may have had some philosophical kind of longing to go to that place, but that's not a place that he ever stayed. And if you follow his life, it's not a place that he evolved to. And in fact, in this documentary, he decided he was going to create his own kind of spiritual connection with the rest of the world through philanthropy and giving back, because he didn't have a lot when he was a kid. And he says in this documentary that the religions of the world have lost their meaning for me. And he said religions, including the one that he supposedly grew up in and had some degree of training in. So he had divested himself even of his own historical and cultural and religious roots. I just want to give you some broader context here. So very interesting cat. So I wanted to look at his chart. Let me bring it up. Like, what makes a person successful? What drove Vidal Sassoon to be a success? Now, without knowing his rising time or time for the ascendant, we have an Aries ascending here. So one of the things that I really tapped into in his chart were conjunctions. The story of the conjunction. And not just any conjunctions, we're talking tight conjunctions. Let's start here. Saturn, Venus in the sign of Sagittarius. 16, 15, very, very, very close. And of course, what does he do? He winds up leaving England. He travels. Well, he travels to, at that time, Mandate Palestine, soon to become Israel. He travels to America and he becomes a success. An even bigger success in America than he was in England. And that's very Sagittarian. And he meets his wife, an American wife, right there. Venus-Saturn conjunction. And there is something about Sassoon that with his dedication to perfection and professionalism with this Venus-Saturn conjunction that also comes through. He has such a high standard, incredibly high standard. And I think we can see that in some ways, right? Because the in conjunct here happens to be the sign of Pluto in Cancer. And for me, this represents kind of this deeply impoverished past. You know, this place where he grew up in basically a state-run institution and didn't have a pot to piss in. To me, this is what is motivating through this this Venus-Saturn conjunction, to better himself and to better himself through relationships, key and specific relationships with people like the Mary Quants of the world. Mary Quant happens to be an Aquarian, by the way, and he has Mercury in Aquarius. So he's driven, right? It is the in conjunct that is driving him. And it actually impacted his marriage as well. He got married and he and his first wife did everything together. They created the Vidal Sassoon product line. They were doing talk shows. They were doing game shows. They were inseparable with the Venus-Saturn conjunction. But eventually she couldn't handle it. She got lost in his world. And I think he was also having an affairs, which is also the Pluto in conjunct Venus-Saturn. So it drove a wedge. Ultimately, it split that conjunction. and they got a divorce. And it really impacted their children. In fact, one of his children committed suicide. Very difficult. He talks about it in the documentary. I think she committed suicide on January 1st. So whenever January 1st comes around, I disappear for a few days. I don't come back. Here we have Neptune in Leo, 28 degrees retrograde. Again, children. And it's also interesting here as well because, you know, when you get into Neptune, you get into things like the 12th house and 12th house institutions, like the place that he was raised in. And then we have the inconjunct here with Neptune and also Jupiter and Uranus, right? So again, these inconjuncts are driving Vidal Sassoon. The outer planets are driving him in ways that he may not even begin to understand. You know, this is driving him towards power, refinement, marrying somebody who's beautiful. His first wife, even his second one, beautiful woman, absolutely stunning. And working with women, right? Venus is feminine. And so he was a professional working with women. He was a professional working in the Venusian arts. And with Sagittarius, he went global. And Pluto was the driver, just as Neptune is the driver over here. Neptune being this place. And this is the mother, right? Cancer's the mother. And in some ways, he's got to feel like his mother rejected him. Like he can rationalize with his Mercury and Aquarius all he wants, which he probably did a pretty good job of. But you can't be in that institution and not think that your mother abandoned you, even if she did come once a month, which must have been heartbreaking for the kid. I'm just, you know, this is the actual institution, this Neptunian place of his childhood. And coming in and inconjuncting Jupiter and Uranus. And to me, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is the maverick. Right? This is what set him apart from everybody else. Uranus is innovative. It's in Aries. It's going to take risks. And in Jupiter and Pisces, it's kind of like if I could sort of bring together everything that Gore Vidal lived or experienced in any other lifetime prior to this, it's right there, Jupiter and Pisces. Getting ready to explode with Uranus. And he was innovative as hell, man, very innovative. And he took the end of something, that 29th degree, the end of, you know, sort of the end of this institution of hair care and things like that. And he blazed a new trail with Uranus in Aries. And here we have another conjunction with the sun in Capricorn. Of course, the Capricornian sun that's in the third decan. That's going to put it in Virgo's decan. And of course it's Virgo because he's helping people, right? He's helping them. Gore Vidal in a weird way was a healer. You know, you wouldn't think of him as a healer, but in a weird way, he was kind of a healer. And he was healing self-images. And there's this really interesting, God, it's fascinating, this documentary. There's this really interesting passage where he's cutting this woman's hair. And she is like kind of freaking out in a very British, you know, restrained sort of way. And he's talking her off the ledge. And she's asking him questions like, do you always cut people's hair the way you want to cut their hair versus the way they want their hair to be cut? And he had to think about that. And the way that he kind of spun this moment, he talked about instincts. He talked about instincts. And he said, I looked at your hair and I saw a line. And I wanted to cut with that line. And I wanted to follow the instinct that I saw with your hair. Like the inner nature of, he didn't say the inner nature because that would blow her out. But he was basically telling her, like, look, I saw something in the shape of your head, the line of your hair, and I'm following my instincts with it. And when we follow our instincts, there's a very good chance that the results will be much better than had we not followed our instincts. And if we don't listen to our instincts, then we can theoretically pay the price. And the price that you're going to pay by me not listening to my instincts is a pretty bad fucking haircut. I mean, he was kind of saying those things, but he said them in a way that it was almost like listening to Buddha cut hair. It was really interesting. And I know that he was trying to also sell her on the cut too, but he sold her on the cut in a way that was very enlightening. And he said, look, if you don't like it, give it a try. If you don't like it, you come back, I'll change it. I'll work with you. I'll do something different. So he wasn't sitting there demanding that his way was the right way. He was giving her an option. So this is the service part, this Virgoan part. And also he was a freaking health freak. Gore Vidal was a health freak. He was really into exercise and diet, and he worked out every single day. You know why he wanted to work out? Well, he has Mars in Sagittarius. He needed to. Squaring Uranus, he had energy. This guy had energy to burn. He wanted to be in shape. He wanted to look good. He also wanted to work 14 hours a day. He knew that if he was going to be successful, he'd have to outwork everybody. So being in shape was a big part of it. He was one of the pioneers of Pilates, by the way. Fascinating guy. He had his own health and yoga workout show in LA for like 200 episodes. It's a lot. Sun conjunct Mercury. Gore Vidal was idea driven. And he saw the big picture. He saw the new potential. He saw the potential for a new culture with Mercury and Aquarius, right? His antenna was a signal and attenuated for the times. And his sun was right there behind it to drive it. And of course, Mary Quant, the Aquarian, his partner in crime, was right there as well. He knew so many people, and he had such great instincts. And somebody brought in Nancy Kwan. It's a story he tells. Brought in Nancy Kwan, the beautiful Asian actress who had that movie, was it Flower Drum Girl with William Holden? Anyway, he decided, they decided Nancy Kwan wanted a haircut with the great Vidal Sassoon. So she shows up, and he's starting to cut her hair, and he stops, and he calls up this magazine. And he says, look, I've got Nancy Kwan here, and I really feel like we could have a cover. And this magazine is like, okay. So they stopped the cut, and they went over to where the magazine had photographers, and he set up there, and he snip, and the cut is astounding. And it was like the cut of the year. It was magazine cover of the year. And he listened to his instincts. Of course, he's a promoter and a marketer. He knows that if he gets Nancy Kwan on that cover of that freaking magazine, he's going to be bigger. But he had the instincts and the artistic instincts to figure it out. Here we have the sextile, right? The sextile is about opportunity. It's about opportunity, picking up opportunities. Really good stuff here. So he's able to, when he talks about instincts, the instincts are the lightning. It's the lightning path coming from Uranus to Mercury. Bang, it's fast. And this guy he made moves, did things very quickly. But I'll tell you what he had. Number one, he had unshakable belief and faith in himself, even though it was questioned many times, which he talks about. The other thing that he had is he had talent, he had skill. He found the one thing that he did really well, which is cut hair, and he found the other thing that he did really well, which was he understood the cultural significance and importance of a haircut and a specific style of hair during a particular time, which would be his imprimatur. The 60s, in many ways, do not exist without Vidal Sassoon. He also has this moon in Scorpio, which is very intense. And he has got a moon-Neptune square. That's a tricky square. That's a very tricky square. There's a covetous nature with this square. And it may have been kind of a secret kind of covetousness. Maybe that was born out of poverty. Maybe that was born out of this complete cratering and kind of gutting of his home and his mother. Sometimes with moon and Scorpio, square Neptune, there can be insane jealousy. But I would think in a weird way that maybe the Neptune square actually helped him with his possessiveness and jealousy. Perhaps. But again, what do we see here? We see the trine from Pluto to the moon, and we see the trine from both Uranus and Jupiter to the moon as well. And the moon, again, is women, right? Feminine energy. And that his moon in Scorpio would be transformational. He would transform the look and feel of women. And he's got the outer planets right there, poised to feed right into that intense Scorpio moon. And not just Pluto and Uranus, but Jupiter too. And that's money. This is a money chart, if you haven't figured it out. Really interesting, fascinating documentary. I highly recommend it. And the Mars trine Neptune is creative. That is a really creative aspect. And of course, we can't get out of the discussion without talking about Gemini, with his true node in Gemini. And he did a lot of different things. I mean, the guy was constantly kind of reinventing himself. You know, he went from being a hairdresser to a product manufacturer to being a health advocate, you know, teaching Pilates. I mean, he was always reinventing himself. There was a restless nature to Gore Vidal. And his south node right here, which is conjunct Venus and Saturn, must have just been hell on relationships, I'd have to say. He was married a long time, the first time. Second time, yeah, I don't know how long he was married. Maybe 15, 20 years. Anyway, there you go. The life and chart of Gore Vidal. But I got to thinking about this guy and his model for success. And he was driven. He found the thing, he worked the thing, he improved the thing, and he did it in a way where a lot of people ultimately benefited from it. Nobody's a saint. I'm sure the guy could be an abusive prick. You know, we all have our warts and our downsides or our shadow sides. But you cannot argue with his model of success. Okay, let me check in with you guys. See where you're at. You don't get to say stupid shit, not be accountable. Look in the mirror. Why are you so jealous of others? What are we talking about? What are we talking about here? All right. Zero hedge. Not triggered at all. Just putting your stupid comments. Okay. There's a rumble. There's a rumble in Chatlandia. Let's see. I just got cream cheese and powdered sugar to make icing. Human touch is significant. But all that gratifying people's superficial egos. I don't know. I mean, what would Gore Vidal have done instead? You know? I mean, what would he have done instead? And he created an industry. He created an industry. He created products and people that would sell his products, people that would manufacture his products. And, you know, that was related to jobs. You know, he created jobs, and he helped create and transform an industry in a lot of ways. My father was a hairdresser, and I'm sure that, you know, Vidal Sassoon might have played a role in my a particular patch of my father's career as a hairdresser. My father went to beauty school, right? So I guess we all have some degree of ego. We go outside. Do you want to look like complete and utter rubbish when you go outside? You know, I don't think so. I think to some degree, we all want to have some level of care and self-respect for how we look. Some people want to flaunt it and have a spectacular, kind of presentation. That's on them, right? I was basically talking about his chart as kind of an interesting model for success. Could have been anything, but he worked with beauty and style. Anyway, shall we talk about something more real? Shall we get into the realness? All right, let's get into the realness now. So there's a very popular movie. Well, I'm not sure how popular it is because a lot of people are slamming this movie. It's called Jewell, and it's about Richard Jewell. And Richard Jewell would have had his birthday 4 days ago. He was born on December 18th, if I'm not mistaken. And I've brought his chart up before. And I wanted to I wanted to bring it up here again. Let's see, what is this? No, we don't want that one. That's a private one. Hold on. Jasper's back for, okay, here it is. Jasper's back for Act 2. Okay, I got to check on my fantasy team. Hold on. Where are we? Okay. Okay. Where are we now? Let's see. Updating the score. Takes a deep breath. Okay. It's we're in the fourth quarter. 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left, Jasper. All right. So the new movie, Richard Jewell, you guys know the story. He was a security guard hired by the company that the International Olympic Committee, the United States Olympic Committee, subcontracted out to. And he was able to actually help deter many people losing their lives in a bomb that went off in the Olympic Village, which supposedly was planted by a guy by the name of Eric Rudolph. Now, they didn't arrest Eric Rudolph for another 7 years. Think about that. 7 years between the time that Eric Rudolph theoretically planted this bomb, right? But Richard Jewell had to take the heat. And I can tell you right now, my instincts and gut and say Eric Rudolph had nothing to do with this bomb. And I even have a bit of proof that I just found out tonight. Now, it is sort of tangential proof, but it is interesting nonetheless. So let me fire this chart up here, and we'll get into this. All right. So this is Richard Jewell. He's on the outside. I don't know the time of his birth, but what I did is I gave him a Pisces rising because he sure as hell played the role of the scapegoat. Let's put it that way, right? He was a freaking scapegoat during that time. And I put his son on the son winds up being on the midheaven because he actually winds up becoming a very famous person during that time. Infamous at first and then famous. So let me tell you a little story. As you know, I was not very far from that event before it went off. The way it was set up was that the Olympic Village was across the street from the House of Blues, which had just opened for the Olympics. It was a big deal. So the entrance of the House of Blues was facing the park of Olympic Village. There was also a side entrance as well. Jasper's biting my finger. He doesn't have any teeth though. Now, there's a street where that side entrance was, and then there was a small wall, like a little wall you could sit on, kind of ran parallel with the sidewalk. And on the other side of the street was like a small little deli, coffee. It wasn't very big. And so what I would do is I would basically follow the shade. So I would go down there in the morning because the shade was on that side of the street. And people would walk down this street headed to the Olympic Village, and then they would sit down and occasionally get their tarot cards read. And as the sun would shift, I would go to the other side of the street, and I would and I would be on the House of Blue side because it was shady. And I would stay there until nighttime. Right? So this was a Friday night, and we could see that the event, it was Saturday night. It was Saturday. Well, this is weird, right? No, this is wrong. I have to change this, and I'll tell you why it's wrong. My apologies. I got to go back in here. Because they are messing with history on this. All right, let me stay here for a minute. Okay. So when I first read about this, when I first was trying to locate the time the bomb went off, they said that it went off at 1:30 in the morning on Saturday, which is why I have Saturday here. And I changed the time because that bomb did not go off at 1:30. I can tell you that right now. It was not 1:30 in the morning. At the most, it was 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock at night. Maybe. I was there. And they're saying it went off at 1:30. That is completely impossible. And what I found interesting here, let me see if I can find this thing. Oh, man. Hold on. I think I got off my mark with something. Okay, that's not it. I saw this. It's making me angry. And Jasper, you're messing with me now. And here it is. All right, so I'm going to show you this. This is interesting. CNN says it was 1:20 a.m. It was not 1:20 a.m. It was not the bomb did not go off at 1:20 a.m. in the morning. And I know this because it says right here. It says 22 minutes later, 1:25 a.m. It was not 1:25 a.m. I mean, I left that area at the latest at about 11 o'clock at night on Friday. It was not Saturday morning. So I'm going to have to change this. This is factually wrong. It's wrong. By the time I got back to this bar/pub, it was at the most 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, at the most. And I'd already left the area and the bomb had already gone off. This is wrong. Factually wrong. At the very most, it might have been close to midnight. It was not 1:25 a.m. Read this here. An anonymous 9/11 call warns that a bomb will explode in Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta during the Olympic Games. Caller says there's a bomb in Centennial Park. You have 30 minutes. The call is determined to have been made from a payphone near the park. I left that area at the latest at about 11:30. And they claim that it was Eric Rudolph that actually did that. Let me go back in and change the time, because when I change the time, it's going to change the chart. So I'm going to go July 26 because it was Friday night. It wasn't Saturday. I left on Saturday morning. And let's call it 11 p.m. The other thing too is that Jack Mack and the Heart Attack were playing. How about that? And I don't think Jack Mack and the Heart Attack would be playing at 1:30 in the morning. They would have shut them down. This live band is not going to be playing at 1:30 in the morning at night. That shit gets shut down earlier. So I think that they've got the whole timeline wrong. And based on my memory, it did not work. It did not flow that way. I was at that bar pub no later than 12:30 at night or 12:30 in the morning. So let's look at the chart again. It's really odd. So I think, well, I'm going to use 11 p.m. 11. This is the thing that was really like, wow. So even if you use 11 p.m. and I kind of relocated Richard Jewell's chart at what, 12 noon. Here we are, 11 p.m., almost midnight. We have the Pisces ascendant, which is the zone of the scapegoat. Now, if we move it closer to 1, of course, we're going to get Saturn on the ascendant. We're going to have the South Node in Aries. Well, the South Node in Aries is already in the first house. And then we have Saturn there, and we have Juno. So the true node is going to be over here in Libra. It's also going to be conjuncting Chiron at the same time. So when we think of Aries, what do we think of? We think of Marshall and bombs and explosions and all that other stuff. And when we think of Saturn, what do we think of? When we think of the government, we think of corporatocracies, we think of hierarchies. And so what happens on the heels of all this? They roll out the anti-terror bill. And the anti-terror bill is the precursor to the Patriot Act. It's right there. It's right there. Squaring, right? Squaring our friend Richard Jewell's Mercury in Aquarius. And the framing, right? This is the frame. And in the movie, they actually get him to talk into the phone and to be the voice, right? That's the Mercury in Aquarius. So we see Jupiter here Mercury in Capricorn. And we see Jupiter here, which is, again, this expansive, big, large, overarching Capricornian energy, swallowing Richard Jewell's Mercury, right? This is the press. This is the government. This is the FBI. Like, this is the world just swallowing this guy right here and distorting what he has to say. The square to Chiron, they're looking, right? They're looking for a scapegoat. And even in Richard Jewell's chart, he's got the Jupiter Chiron conjunction. Hey man, that is scapegoat city right there. It was like he was going to have to go through this at some point in his life. And, he probably had other chapters and other episodes, and he finally felt, fuck, man, I am a hero now, right? I am a hero. And then he wasn't. It's a terrible story. Absolutely terrible story. And it's a story about character assassination and what the press can do to you if they want to absolutely ruin your life. Terrible. Bad stuff. And what's interesting too about Jupiter Chiron here is it's not really doing anything. It's sort of singletoned out. Here we have his South Node in Aquarius, and we have transiting Neptune on his South Node, Uranus on his Saturn. This is the public message. This was Richard Jewell broadcast to the world, and Saturn being very distorted. Eventually, there's Neptune aspects all over the place. Look at this. He's got Venus, Neptune conjunct in Scorpio. Again, kind of this Neptunian crisis. In Scorpio, it's almost crushing and death-like in some ways. Squaring off against his own Mars and Leo. Mars and Leo wants to be a hero. And apparently, by all reports, the guy wanted to be a hero. He had his true node in Leo. Look at that. And ironically, he was a hero. All the things that he aspired to be, because he was clearly somebody who had some kind of idea about being something bigger or better than himself. And people who employed him said at times he had, grandiose visions, or he had, some kind of complex where he saw himself as somebody greater than who he was a security guard most of the time. And he saw himself as being, a guardian of justice, probably. And how could he not? He's got a Mars trine to the sun in Sagittarius. And his desire, his aspiration to be a hero played out. And when it did play out, when he did actually live into his destiny, the script that he had been writing all of his life in some ways, what happens? This happens. This happens. Right? This happens. Wow. Interesting. Really, really interesting. And we've got even like Venus down here. See, this is, to me, this is a little nefarious. It's a little nefarious because Venus is at, where is she? 21 Gemini, and his sun is at 25 Sagittarius, conjunct the galactic center. And so we have, Gemini, there are three signs that I think are really closely associated with spycraft: Pisces, Gemini, and Scorpio. You figure out why. So what we have here is we have this doppelganger who would eventually become Eric Rudolph. Venus and Gemini, there'd be the other, right? But he would have to go through this very strange trial, initiation in a lot of ways. The other thing too is that the moon is it is balsamic to his sun. It's balsamic to his sun. Now the moon itself is not balsamic. The moon is headed towards being full in Aquarius, but it's balsamic to his sun, which meant that there would be some kind of apotheosis here, but he would also have to let it go. And that the moon, and I actually really like this chart in a lot of ways, because this would be the press, the ninth house. The third and the ninth house, the press. And where did he go? Like, where did Richard Jewell go? He went and holed up in his mother's place. Very sad. Really, really sad. So with the balsamic moon here, he had to let go, right? He had to disseminate everything about this moment. Wow. I haven't seen the movie. I plan on seeing it. And look, even the true node, right? True node conjunct this. This is his moment, man. Like, this was his moment to shine. And he should have. He really should have shined. He should have been lionized. He should have been lauded. This guy should have had parades and never bought another meal in his life. Do you know what the biggest crime he committed was? That he stopped a lot more people from dying. He was a hero. And what did they do? They turned him into the perp. And he had to fight it. And he eventually won his court case against the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Slander. But they were so dead set on finding a patsy so they could pass their stupid fucking anti-terror bill, which they had in the works. It was ready to go. When I went to Atlanta, that place was crawling with paramilitary from day one. From day one, I could have been in Gaza when I was in Atlanta. They had guys, state troopers, they had National Guard, everybody was there. Kevlar vests. I mean, it felt like there was going to be a, either martial law or revolution or a lockdown or something. And you know what happened? It happened. For the next few days after the Olympics, it turned into Checkpoint Charlie. I was gone. I left. That morning, it was dark and dreary and gray. And I'm like, I am so out of here. So out of here. But I eventually returned, and I got there just when they were lifting the barricades away. And it turned out to be okay. But for a few days, you were living in East Berlin for a while. in Atlanta if you wanted to go do any of the Olympic stuff. All right, let me check in with you guys. Let's see where you're at. I'm about ready to get out of here. I'm a Gem Rising, Pisces Sun, not a spy, but would find that cool. Is it too late to be on age 57? It's never too late. It is never too late. He was a hero. Absolutely, he was a hero. So sad. False. Ratty Finkelstein, great name. False flag victim of the deep state. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. Is it tomorrow, Hong Kong? Let's see what else we have here. It is tomorrow in Hong Kong. Hello, Stephen. My grandmother was a hairdresser and had her own beauty salon. I grew up in that place. I can't really believe much of what the news tells us. Good. My mom's side has many hairdressers, including my grandfather. I considered it because it's creative. I went into commercial art instead. That's fine. We may not be in the same timeline anymore. I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. Let's see, what else? Sag 29, often with earthquakes. Very, very close, very, very close to that galactic center, right? On the cusp of Aquarius, very, very trembling. Rudolph hid out in the mountains of Western North Carolina, yes. Wouldn't that be a funny movie if Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer became a terrorist? You know, he was inspired with the red nose and he became a communist terrorist. And Rudolph trained a band of paramilitary reindeer so that they could overthrow Santa because he's so fucking oppressive. Would that be a fun little animated short? Rudolph, the communist-inspired red-nosed reindeer, storming the North Pole, taking the North Pole over, freeing the elves. Yeah, the elves are oppressed, man. All right. Hey, listen, if you want a reading, go over to robertphoenix.com. I still got some Christmas specials up. It's never too late to find a really nice gift for somebody, which is astrological reading. I got little certificates that I made. You can, the JPEGs, you can print them out. You can stick them in cards. It's really cool. Go to my website, robertphoenix.com, get a reading. If you like the show, subscribe, hit the like button, thumbs up. And I think I'll be back on Tuesday. I'll have the old gal around. The old gal. She'll be in. I don't know. Maybe I'll try to get her on the show. Maybe I'll interview her. Maybe you'll meet my my dear loving mother. Okay. God bless. Use your head to discern what's real. Your heart to stay open to what's possible. You've been watching Sunday Night Astro Live with Robert Phoenix. Shall we just check in on my fantasy team one more time? One more time? See what we got? Fingers crossed, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Yeah. Let's see what we got. Clickety, 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 clickety. And come on now. What do we got? Oh, yes. Yes. Let's see how much time is left in the game. 1:44 left. If you are a Kansas City Chief fan, you can do your victory dance. And in about 1:25 seconds, I'm going to do my victory dance. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you on Tuesday.